Today, we'll be taking a look at the Vaxee NP-01S Wireless to see how it improves on the original wired version and where it stands next to other top mice on the market. Now, Vaxee did send this mouse out to us, but as always, this will not affect our thoughts in any way.
In terms of click latency, the NP-01S Wireless is fairly good. At default debounce settings, the NP-01S Wireless has around 5.3 milliseconds of click latency in our testing, which is better than Lamzu mice on their default settings. However, if you use the lowest possible debounce setting of 2 milliseconds, the NP-01S Wireless is around 3.2 milliseconds of click latency, which falls a bit behind Lamzu and Pulsar mice when set to their 0 millisecond debounce, which is their lowest. Additionally, this is a bit behind Logitech and Razer, which don't offer adjustable debounce as well. However, do keep in mind that differences in click latency of up to 8 milliseconds will generally not be noticeable by most, if not all, humans.
We've recently designed a new rig and wrote a program to more accurately measure the motion latency of one mouse relative to another. For our testing, we used the Zowie ZA13C as a control to test against. Using this new method, we measured the motion latency of the NP-01S Wireless to be around 0.5 milliseconds slower than the ZA13C in standard mode. Switching to competitive mode lowers the motion latency to just 0.2 milliseconds slower than the ZA13C, making the NP-01S Wireless the fastest 1kHz wireless mouse we have tested.
If you want to see more of this kind of testing, remember to hit that subscribe button. And if you have any in-depth questions, check out our new Discord server, linked in the comments below. Polling stability on the NP-01S Wireless is quite good. Vaxee has announced plans to release a 4K dongle, which would allow for even lower motion latency, which would likely be on par or superior to other 4K mice. In terms of battery life, the NP-01S is solid. Vaxee advertised the battery to be 100 hours in standard mode and 55 hours in competitive mode. We've heard some complaints about the battery life of Vaxee mice in competitive mode, but personally, I haven't had any issues with it, and it seems like it lives up to their claims. For reference, in this section, my hands are around 18 by 10 centimeters, while Eric's are around 18.5 by 10 centimeters.
The NP-01S has a very unique shape, which is fantastic for all kinds of claw grip. Like many other claw grip mice, it has a hump which sits very far back on the mouse, as well as a low button height. The hump of the NP-01S mostly hits the base of my palm, which does create a fair amount of stability without filling out the palm like many other claw grip mice. Because the hump is pushed so far back, the NP-01S feels longer than it actually is, which makes inner hand micro adjustments somewhat difficult. Unlike many other ergonomic mice, the NP-01S has an even button height between the left and right click. For some people, this may make it a bit less comfortable than other ergos, but for me personally, even button height makes left and right movements feel more consistent. The NP-01S does still have side curvature, which is very similar to EC style ergo shapes. The left side has a back flare which is angled enough to create a good spot to brace the thumb against, but also large and rounded enough to fill out the thumb area in a more relaxed grip. Meanwhile, the right side has a flare which sits further forward on the mouse. The more forward placement of the flare naturally angles the fingers outwards, preventing hand cramping. On a symmetrical mouse, the flare being this far forward would restrict the thumb placement heavily. Most symmetrical mice have a flare that's further back, as well as more angled sides which forcefully angle the fingers outwards, making the mouse a lot less safe. What makes the NP-01S so ingenious is that it gets the best of both worlds while still feeling like a symmetrical mouse to some extent. And looking at the front of the mouse, the front flare on the NP-01S is well rounded and is very comfortable for those who wrap their fingers around the front of the mouse. I personally don't own any mice which feel particularly similar to the NP-01S. EC style mice, such as the Death Adder V3, feel wider than the NP-01S, have a lower back, and are heavily tilted from left to right. The Lethal Gaming Gear LA1 sort of has this similar long and thin feeling, but overall the side curvature, hump profile, and just everything feel very different from the NP-01S. Personally, the NP-01S is one of my top 5 performing shapes, and my best performing ergonomic shape. I would most recommend the NP-01S for aggressive claw grip for those with 17 by 8.5 to 21 by 11 cm hands, relaxed claw for those with 18 by 8.5 to 21 by 11 cm hands, pincer claw for those with 17 by 9 to 20 by 12 cm hands, and knuckle claw for those with hands larger than 18 by 9 centimeters.
The NP-01S Wireless comes in at 69 grams, which is actually lighter than the original wired version. The weight balancing is decent, but the mouse is a bit back heavy, which is somewhat noticeable, especially depending on your grip style. Overall, the weight feels good in game. It's not as good as some other mice, but for those who don't like mice under 60 grams, the NP-01S is an amazing choice. Vaxee is known for their superior build quality compared to many other mice, and the NP-01S Wireless is living up to that reputation. This mouse is built like a tank. There's absolutely no noticeable flexing or creaking anywhere on the mouse. If you squeeze absolutely as hard as you can with both hands, you can cause a tiny bit of flex on the left side, which can actuate the side buttons. However, this is absolutely never going to happen in use. The main buttons on the NP-01S Wireless use Huano 10M switches. These are among some of the lightest clicks I have ever felt on a gaming mouse, similar to some of Logitech's mechanical switch offerings. The buttons are very well tensioned with minimal pre-travel and a moderate amount of post, giving these a quick and snappy feel with a softer bottom out. These are not the most tactile, but for in-game use, they feel super amazing and really spammable. The side buttons on the NP-01S Wireless are smaller and protrude out less than the side buttons on the original NP-01S Wired. Additionally, the side buttons are, in my opinion, a bit too far forward, and overall for me, these are just not that easy to hit in-game. In terms of feel though, they are quite solid. Light actuation, minimal pre and post travel, and quite spammable. The scroll wheel on the NP-01S Wireless is a massive improvement over that ratchety, terrible scroll wheel on the wired version. The new scroll wheel has very well tensioned and well-defined steps, but is also relatively smooth and quiet, and is not fucking deafening like that original one. It feels really good in game, and overall I'm quite happy with the new direction Vaxee has gone with their new scroll wheel design.
The coating on the NP-01S is rubberized and is extremely grippy for both dry and sweaty hands, giving the mouse a very premium feel. Vaxee's coating on their wireless mice is easily one of my favorites, up there with Pulsar and Endgame gear. The skates are PTFE and they're fairly good, with reasonable surface area, good thickness, and well-rounded edges. These have a smooth, slower glide. Aftermarket skates would be better, but you certainly don't need to replace these. The NP-01S has onboard adjustable debounce down to 2 milliseconds, meaning most clicks can be registered. For jitter clicking, the light and well-tensioned buttons are quite good, and allow me to hit 14 to 15 CPS, which is on par with other mice. For butterfly clicking, the buttons are a bit narrow, but are relatively easy to hit due to their convex nature, allowing me to hit upwards of 20 CPS. And for drag clicking, the grippy coating makes it very easy to achieve high click speed. I can personally hit over 40 CPS while drag clicking on this mouse.
The NP-01S Wireless is one of the most premium feeling mice on the market right now. Almost every feature on this mouse is immaculate. The only real flaws of this mouse are the higher weight and the slightly poor side buttons, meaning the NP-01S Wireless reaches towards the lower end of S tier on our tier list. Now, at a price of $120, the NP-01S Wireless is on the pricier side of modern wireless mice. This mouse is far from a steal, with super high spec offerings from places like Mechkeys starting at just $50, and extremely premium mice from a ton of mainstream companies at around $80 to $100, but is still less than some of the offerings from companies like Logitech and Razer.